In 2019, a man died in a maximum security federal prison, alone, in a cell with no cellmate, on suicide watch, with two guards who both fell asleep at the same time, with cameras that malfunctioned, with a broken neck that forensic pathologists said was more consistent with homicide than hanging. That man knew the secrets of presidents, princes, and billionaires. He had photos, he had videos, he had names, hundreds of them. And then he was gone. His name was Jeffrey Epstein, and this is the story of how one man built the most powerful blackmail network in modern history, and how the most powerful people in the world let him do it. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York. His father worked for the New York City Parks Department. His mother was a homemaker. By every measure, a completely unremarkable beginning. He was bright, unusually bright. He enrolled at New York University at just 16 years old, studying mathematics. He never finished his degree. But in 1974, without a diploma, he walked into the most elite private school in Manhattan, the Dalton School, and got a job teaching mathematics and physics to the children of New York's wealthiest families. This is where it started. One of his students had a father named Alan Greenberg, the chairman of Bear Stearns, one of the most powerful investment banks on Wall Street. Epstein impressed him. In 1976, at 23 years old, with no finance degree and no experience, Jeffrey Epstein was hired at Bear Stearns. He was fast, he was charming, he was ruthless. Within a few years, he was a limited partner, handling the accounts of the ultra-wealthy, clients worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Then, in 1981, he left, under circumstances that were never fully explained. Some said it was a compliance issue. Others said he simply moved on. What happened next is where the story gets strange. Epstein started his own firm. He called it J. Epstein and Company. He claimed to only work with clients worth over $1 billion. He had no public office, no listed employees, no verifiable fund returns, no regulatory filings that anyone could find. He was managing money for the ultra-rich, and nobody could explain exactly how or where the money went. One name kept coming up: Les Wexner, the billionaire founder of Victoria's Secret and Elle brands. Wexner gave Epstein what is believed to be the largest financial power of attorney ever granted to a non-family member in American history. He gave Epstein complete control over his finances, access to his homes, his assets, everything. Through Wexner, Epstein got his Manhattan mansion, a 9-story townhouse on East 71st Street, one of the largest private residences in New York City. He got a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He got a ranch in New Mexico. He got a private Boeing 727 that would later become known around the world by one name: the Lolita Express. By the 1990s, Jeffrey Epstein had built something that money alone cannot buy. He had access. He was photographed with Bill Clinton, with Donald Trump, with Prince Andrew of the British royal family, with Alan Dershowitz, one of the most famous lawyers in America, with Stephen Hawking, with tech billionaires, hedge fund managers, Nobel Prize winners, and heads of state. He hosted dinners that people flew across oceans to attend. He funded scientific research. He donated to universities. He cultivated relationships with everyone. And he collected something from all of them: information. But underneath this world of power and prestige, something far darker was happening. Epstein had created a system, a machine, and the fuel that ran it were girls. Young girls, mostly from broken homes, from poverty, from situations where they were vulnerable, isolated, and desperate for money and attention. His recruiters, young women who had already been groomed themselves, would approach them, offer them money for a simple massage, $100, $200, easy money. They would be brought to one of Epstein's properties: the Manhattan Mansion, the Palm Beach Estate, the island, the ranch in New Mexico, and what happened there was not a massage. Victims described a system of systematic sexual abuse. They described being trafficked to Epstein's powerful friends. They described being told to recruit other girls. They described being threatened when they tried to speak. And the most chilling detail of all, Epstein had cameras. Everywhere, hidden cameras in the bedrooms. Recording everything. Recording everyone, This was not just abuse, this was a blackmail operation. And the people being recorded were among the most powerful on the planet. In 2005, a mother in Palm Beach called the police. Her 14-year-old daughter had been paid to go to a man's house and had been sexually abused. The Palm Beach Police Department began investigating. What they found was overwhelming. Victim after victim, girl after girl, evidence of a systematic, organized operation targeting underage girls. They brought their findings to the FBI and the Justice Department. The case against Epstein was described by investigators as one of the most extensive child sex abuse cases they had ever seen. Federal prosecutors prepared an indictment that could have put Epstein in prison for life. And then something happened that is still being investigated today. Alexander Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, who would later become Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor, made a deal with Epstein's lawyers. A deal so secretive that it was hidden from the victims. A deal so lenient that it shocked legal experts across the country. Epstein pled guilty to 2 state charges of soliciting prostitution. Not federal charges, not trafficking. Not the dozens of counts that investigators had prepared. He was sentenced to 18 months in a county jail. Not a federal prison. But it gets worse. Under the terms of the deal, Epstein was allowed to leave the jail 6 days a week, for up to 12 hours at a time, to go to his private office. His lawyers called it work release. Victims called it what it was, a pedophile being allowed to walk free while serving his sentence. He served 13 months. He was released in 2009. He registered as a sex offender. And then he went right back to his life. The parties continued, the flights continued, the powerful friends continued to visit. The world moved on. For 10 years, nothing happened. In 2018, a journalist named Julie Brown at the Miami Herald published an investigation called Perversion of Justice. She had tracked down more than 80 victims. She had documented the sweetheart deal in devastating detail. She had named names. The story exploded. In July 2019, federal agents arrested Jeffrey Epstein at Teterboro Airport as he stepped off his private jet returning from Paris. This time, the charges were federal. Sex trafficking of minors. Conspiracy. Prosecutors said the evidence was overwhelming. They raided his Manhattan mansion. What they found inside would later be described in court documents as a vast trove of evidence. Hundreds of photographs of young women and girls, compact discs labeled with women's names, a safe containing diamonds, an expired foreign passport with a fake name and Epstein's photograph. The files. The question that obsessed the world was simple. Who else was in those files? Whose names were on those discs? What did those hidden cameras record? In December 2023 and January 2024, a federal court in New York began unsealing documents from a civil lawsuit filed by one of Epstein's victims, Virginia Giuffre, against his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell. More than 900 pages were released. They named names: Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, Jean-Luc Brunel, a French modeling agent who was later found dead in his Paris prison cell in 2022. The documents described Giuffre being trafficked to powerful men across multiple countries, being flown on the Lolita Express, being threatened, being silenced. But the full files, the hard drives, the videos, the complete records of what Epstein had collected over decades have never been made public. And many people believe they never will be. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. He was 66 years old. He had been awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. The official cause of death was ruled suicide by hanging. Almost nobody believed it. Consider the circumstances. Epstein had been placed on suicide watch 3 weeks earlier, after he was found on the floor of his cell with marks on his neck. He had been taken off suicide watch just days before his death, against standard protocol. His cellmate had been transferred out, leaving him alone. The 2 guards assigned to check on him every 30 minutes both fell asleep for 3 hours, and later falsified records to cover it up. The security cameras outside his cell malfunctioned and captured no usable footage. Dr. Michael Barden, one of the most respected forensic pathologists in the world, was hired by Epstein's brother to observe the autopsy. His conclusion was direct. The pattern of injuries, specifically the fractures to the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilage, was far more consistent with homicidal strangulation than with suicide by hanging. The official medical examiner ruled it suicide. Dr. Barden said the evidence pointed elsewhere. Who would have wanted Epstein dead? The list was almost too long to consider. Every person whose name was in those files, every person who had flown on that plane, every person who had visited that island, every government that might be implicated. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's closest associate, the woman accused of recruiting and grooming his victims, was arrested in 2020. She was convicted in December 2021 on 5 federal counts, including sex trafficking of minors. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. She has never fully cooperated with investigators. She has never released the names. Here is what we know for certain. Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender who abused hundreds of girls over decades. He moved in the highest circles of global power. He had access to presidents, royalty, scientists, and billionaires. He had cameras everywhere. He had files. He had leverage. He got a deal so lenient it was later found to violate federal law. A judge ruled in 2019 that the Justice Department had illegally hidden the agreement from victims. He died in a maximum security federal prison under circumstances that have never been satisfactorily explained. The people who flew on his plane, who visited his island, who attended his dinners, most of them have never been charged with anything. Most have never been questioned publicly. Most have walked away. What does that tell us? It tells us that the Epstein case was never just about one man. It was about a system where the powerful protect each other, where money buys silence, where the victims, almost always young, almost always poor, almost always without connections, are the last people anyone listens to. The files still exist somewhere, the videos still exist somewhere, the names are still out there. Whether the world will ever see them, that is a different question entirely. Jeffrey Epstein said he had information that could destroy powerful people. He said it to friends, he said it to lawyers, he said it to journalists. He is dead, and the secrets he kept may die with him, or they may not. If this story made you think, subscribe. Every week we go deeper into the cases that reveal the truth about power, money, and who really runs the world. The truth is always darker than the headline. See you next time.